Welcome back, good family, for Maker's Bar, where we are creating 1 million leaders today for tomorrow. It's your boy Seth Garu Baxter, and we have a treat for you today. So I do suggest you open up both ears, empty out your brains, because we are going to be in for some incredible information, touching on a number of different topics. A number of people have been talking about the AI technology and where it's going. Also, I've been hearing the last few years, are we still able to connect with each other as human beings, or is technology preventing that? Well, my guest here today, Peter, please pronounce your last name. I just totally lost
It's okay. It's Lisoskie. So
Lisoskie. I'm so sorry about that. He is the creator and founder of Relatable. And I'd like to take us in a couple of different directions today. So I hope you are here to enjoy the ride with us. Peter, thank you so much for being here on Maker's Bar today. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Seth. It's an honor to be here. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
On behalf of Maker's Bar and the audience, we thank you for taking up the time with us. So, Peter, if you wouldn't mind, I generally start off with, tell us about Peter. Where did you grow up? What was your origin story up until this point now?
Well, I'll keep it as short as possible. But, Seth, I grew up, my dad was full-blooded Ukrainian, first-generation American. And so I grew up in Washington State. And from the time I was 5 years old, Seth, I built houses with my father. I learned all the trades. So I tell people I'm probably the most blue-collar guy in a white-collar body you'll ever meet. Because it was working outside. It was building. We built custom waterfront homes up there. And so I did that. And then I went to college and I got an engineering degree. My dad was an engineer too, but in the sawmill industry. So I decided, no, I didn't want to follow in his footsteps. I want to be an engineer, but I wanted to be in high-tech electronics. I saw that was the future and where I wanted to go. So I did that. While I was in college, I worked in a machine shop for 3 years. So I know how to TIG weld, oxyacetylene weld, I know how to fabricate metal. And, later on in life, it's come in handy because I live on a property now where I've got to, it's kind of remote and I got to, fix things and make things happen. You can't just, drive to a store when you need a part. So went to school, got an engineering degree, started my career at Fluke Electronics, which is their handheld multimeters. There I invented what's called overmold, which is one of the key things. We did all kinds of new innovative stuff, but overmold is if you have a toothbrush that has rubberized components, if you have tools or anything, I invented that. That came from my group. It's all over the world now. And yeah, it's been, I got, I don't know, 7 or 8 of the 18 patents I have on that. Unfortunately, it was for a company, so I didn't financially get to benefit from that, except for the paycheck, right?
Right.
But yeah, so then I went on, Seth, just to, fly through this. I ran divisions for little companies, Nike, Hewlett Packard, Verifone. I've managed from a small group of 13 when I was an engineering manager to over 1,100 people at Hewlett Packard. Nike, that was kind of fun. In the innovative regard, we created the world's first VR glasses way before Oculus. It was a group of 60.
Wow.
Yeah, and they were, how Nike is. It was sport glasses, really cool. We were working with Chinese manufacturers and chipsets, teaching them how to miniaturize things because that was never done before. And so, it's funny. This is typical of the product development roadmap that we all go through, which is at that time, we did all this, we got a working prototype, and then the executives to be said, it's a little too early for this. They shelved it. And as you know, they never came out with it, unfortunately, because, it's kind of, you think back to cell phones and when Steve Jobs kind of entered the play, cell phones had been around for a while. It's just, it was the right time. There's a little bit of the timing aspect of technologies and when they come into play too. So, like I told you off the show, I've been asked, I've been to every place in the world, continents wise, except for Africa and Antarctica. And so I've traveled extensively. That's part of the reason why I got out of, the corporate world, because I wasn't around for my family. I was always gone. And even though the money and the stock options and the bonuses were great, it's like, at some point in time, it's like, how much do you want to trade to the devil, so to speak? And so I said, I'm not going to do that. So fast forward to today, this is my fourth startup. I've had 2 exits. Not all of them have been in tech, just because I'm just a curious guy. I like to do different things, and I like to, solve problems, and I like to address. I mean, we didn't even talk about that, but I had a large wellness center in California and dealt with a lot of Eastern medicine traditions, but also clinical studies with infrared. We help women reduce breast cancer tumors with Kaiser Permanente. So there's all kinds of stuff that I don't know. I always look at life as like, hey, what else is possible? And kind of how can you look at things? One of the big things currently today with Relatable is I just have a fascination, Seth, with not just megatrends. So we know tech megatrends like the internet and cell phones, but I'm more fascinated with the socioeconomic megatrends and what makes humans tick, and where are humans going, and how is it fitting in the progression and development of the mix between human society and technology. And so that's kind of the whole story on how Relatable was born.
Describe Relatable, and then I have 2 follow-ups, but exactly what is Relatable? So we use Relatable, we want to be relatable. But right. I myself, in looking at a video demonstration, I would love you to describe exactly what I saw in amazement for our audience.
Well, thank you. Relatable, really, it's simply what it is and does is it's a new category of software. The category name is interactive video relationships. And I stress the relationships piece of this because here's why. You have things, there's 6 of these online shifts that have happened, these socioeconomic shifts with customers and their online behavior. I won't list off all 6, but I'll list off a few of them here. Number 1 is, and I talked to, I think, about 111 founders and CEOs last year as we were getting ready to launch, because we launched about 5.5 months ago. And what's interesting is when you talk about these, every single person's going, They're all shaking their head. Yes. The first one is, when we want to find a product or service, what do? We go online and do research. I don't know of anyone, and if someone does that's listening to the show, please contact me on LinkedIn if you do this. If the first thought in your head is when you're looking for a product or service, you think, hey, I think I'll pick up the phone and call a salesperson. Doesn't happen.
No,
in fact, not. Gartner did a study last year. I don't know if you're aware, Gartner, they're a big research group. 75% of all B2B consumers never want to talk to a salesperson ever again. Mm-hmm. That's a lot. They're all doing the self kiosk, right? So that's the first one. Second one is everybody's watching or listening, hence live streaming, podcasting, and video. There's a group out there. Some people have heard of them. Some people haven't. They're called native digitals. They're typically 35 and younger, although you can be a native digital and think like one if you're a baby boomer or a millennial or, Gen Xer, but typically they're 51%. They're a growing population. They are all about interaction and community. And this started, if you remember, a few years ago, back when it was Twitch and Discord. And now look, it's a proliferation of communities everywhere. Why? Because that group, that socioeconomic group, drove that, right? So they even invented an acronym called TLDR. Too long, didn't read. Everybody's watching, everybody's listening. So, that's the key thing. Another one is people now are looking for a relationship, not a transaction.
Absolutely.
I don't say in business. Yeah. If you think about it, right? If you're constantly doing lead gen I define as I bring you in as a lead, I bring you into my sales process, and I try to persuade you to buy. That's lead gen. Okay. Well, guess what? No one wants to be sold. This is why email marketing is crumbling. Sales funnels are crumbling because these guys are pushing ahead with push button tech and their customers went that way, And so right now, if you look at customers, if your first thought is transaction, you basically have obliterated your customer loyalty. Because if they're a transaction, they have no loyalty to your company. If they have no loyalty, what are they going to do? They're going to shop.
Yep.
And so, if you think about, well, as a business and profitability and long-term value of the customer, and you look at that and do the math, you probably want to pay attention to customer loyalty, because if you look at, customer acquisition costs now, CAC, they're at an all-time high and they keep going up and up and up. So to acquire customers is super expensive. To keep customers is much more profitable. So that's one of them. The last one, there's a couple other ones, but I want to bring this one up because this one to me is fascinating. And that is these other ones, as you know, the shift has already happened. Customers
Absolutely.
are already, but this sixth one is really interesting. And that is, customers or people are starting to get tired of having a monologue talk at you. So you look at social sites, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, it's all the passive video. It's talk at you. What does it do? Scroll.
Yep.
And guess what? Passive video, in my opinion, is like the 8-track tape of the music industry, or the way email was in the early 2000s.
I agree. I see that. I totally see that.
Yes, it's some people look at me and go, "You are out of your mind." I go, "No, I'm not. This is what's happening." So the shift that's occurring right now is people are looking for not a monologue, but a dialogue. They want to have interaction. They want to have engagement. They want to go through this process from, if you think about relationships in a simple term, Seth, it's kind of like we go from awareness. I mean, you have friends and maybe a significant other. We go through awareness, connection, engagement. That's where all social stops in a relationship. You can't really go, I don't care whether you're on LinkedIn or wherever you're at, you can't go beyond engagement. But relationships go further, right? They go to nurture, build trust, generate respect. And then for you and I, it's affinity. If it's your significant other, it's intimacy. That's kind of how we do relationships as humans, right? So if you look at that, and I looked at all these shifts, and I looked at, the ability to, how do we develop these relationships? That's how we came up with interactive video relationships. So Relatable is interactive video. It's video because everybody's watching or listening, and video is the best way for us it's the richest way for us to develop a relationship, right? I mean, I wish they had this stuff years ago and I wouldn't have to travel all over the world like I did, but now we have it, and we can sit in our offices and do these live streaming and Zooms and, whatever we do. But the key thing is, what people are looking for is they want to, when they come into video experiences like you saw, first of all, they want to choose their own experience. One size fits all marketing ain't going to cut it anymore. And they want stuff that's personal and relevant to them. So for example, for me, I'm a SaaS founder, right? So I develop a relatable interactive video. You come in, Seth, I talk about the shift and you go, I get it. I talk about the solution for you because yes, you need to focus on, okay, still, what is the solution and value I bring to that customer? But then it's like, well, Seth, what do you want to learn about? This, or this? You choose, right? Everybody has a different priority order on how they want to learn. And these video experiences, you can go off and learn about that. And then I can pop back in at the end of the video and go, well, hey, Seth, do you want to learn about something else? Or you want to go try a free trial? Or do you want to set up a meeting with me? But it's your choice, right? And what you want to do. So I can do in Relatable, I can do ask questions. I can do what we call touchable in-screen experiences, which like at the end, it's like, hey, if you want to set up with a meeting with me, there's going to be a button here. You just tap on it. So it's almost frictionless. You go right into that meeting. But I can also do, one of our sectors that we focus on are nonprofits and foundations. And so they've never had, if you think about nonprofits, they need donor acquisition, but even more importantly, they need donor retention, right? So how have they done that in the past? Well, they do quarterly reports and there's all these numbers and figures, and they maybe do a passive video. Imagine though, in Relatable, we have a teleprompter where in fact, our ambassador that works the nonprofit sector, he was just down in Mexico building a house for an underprivileged family. So he takes a Relatable down there, he talks, and then he can push a button, flip the camera, and he can show all the volunteers and every day in building the house, and then bring it back. And they go, hey, if you're interested, this resonated, you'd like to be part of our cause, just go ahead and tap the button. You can do this, or they can send that to their donors for impact, going, this is how we are being stewards of your money, right? So these video experiences, and they can ask them questions in there too for input, like, what would you like to learn about? Well, based on what you want to learn about, then we'll go here. So that's what Relatable is and does. It's really about creating these experiences, creating these pathways, but then also creating the relationship. So for you, that's where the relationship piece comes in. Based on your answers and actions, which were personal and relevant to you, with Relatable, I can send you other video content based on your answers and actions. It's totally relevant to you, right? So now we're nurturing that relationship through video content, but doing it in a way that is what's important to you. And really, if you think about it, that's kind of how we develop relationships as human beings, right?
I see that. It's supportive of building a relationship. It's supportive of building not only customer trust, but long-term customer engagement.
Correct.
I see that.
Yeah.
And I definitely would advocate. I can't say enough. It was one thing for me to learn about what Relatable was, but I really would suggest people take your video presentation is incredible. And it's only a small sample. And when I just was looking at that, I thought, oh my gosh, I kind of felt, dating myself here a little bit, I'm a little kid in the Jetsons time.
Yeah. But you know, the nice thing, Seth, is like whichever one you saw, I hope you got the feeling of like, if it was me, it was like, I was just talking to you, right?
Yes.
It was almost like,
right.
Even though I'm talking to a whole bunch of people at the same time through video, it's like, it almost feels like it's a one-to-one, just you and me talking, right? Yes. I tell people all the time, look, if you want to reconnect with your relatability, the very first thing to do is picture in your mind at a kitchen table sitting next to the person, not across from them. Because when you sit next to somebody, it's like, hey, you know, can you relate to this? It's like, you ever had this happen to you, right? People go, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, right? And that's being relatable. That's just being authentic, being genuine, connecting in a way where people go, man, that person gets me.
That person gets me. I was taking some notes down here, and some of this fascinating other areas I want to get back into. This in particular note was discuss with us how AI plays a role in some of this. Does AI play a role, and how it's supportive of what the interconnected nature of what Relatable is?
Yeah. Well, okay. So first off, I'll tell everybody, I am not against AI. I think, and I've talked about that. You probably see my content, Seth. Yes. AI makes sense using it in the tech stack at the right time. Okay. So Relatable, we use AI. So here's the thing. We have people that they're not native digitals. They're older. And this is how they say it. When I've talked to a lot of these people. The first hurdle they have, this is what they say. They go, I get really nervous when I have to talk to my phone. That's how they say it. It's the video. It's like when they're looking at the camera, it's like deer in headlights, right? However, I will say this. For all of you guys that are going, yeah, I don't know if I can do video. HubSpot, which we all know who they are, they did a study last year. 70% of all consumers don't care as much about brand or company as they want a direct interaction through video with the CEO or founder. If I tell people, look, I don't care if you're a Fortune 5000 corp CEO in a big corporation, or you're a solopreneur. If you are having trouble and a little anxiety with video, you need to get over yourself, because you got to. And even me, I created this thing when I first got out. I was like, ugh, right? So, but you know, it's a lot better. It's kind of like, you know, when we were kids, right? When you started riding a bike, you had the training wheels, and you did it for a little while, and pretty soon you came to your mom or dad and you said, hey, can you take these off and give me a push? And away you go. It's kind of like that with video. You start riding a bike, you'll never forget. So as far as the AI, we use AI as one of the tools where people can write a prompt inside Relatable. They don't need to go to ChatGPT. It creates a whole interactive video script with questions. Then you can edit it. You can also do manual scripts, or if you want, like a lot of people do, you can talk off the top of your head. The other ways we use AI and Relatable is once you've done your video recording, You can obviously redo it, you can trash it, you can do whatever you want. But when you're ready to go, you push a button and it builds the whole interactive for you. So now you come into like this video scrubber experience, and we'll show you a demo sometime, Seth. But then you basically, you can add your elements, you can add questions, you can add touchables, you can add popovers. Like if you want to do a pitch presentation, you can do popovers inside there. But you can do everything inside Relatable. But the cool thing about it is we built this for your phone. So I tell people, look, with Relatable, you can do it anytime, anywhere. I want people to be able to do relatables in taxi cabs, in hotel rooms, in the airport, in a coffee shop, anywhere you are in the world, outside doing experiences, right? But the other thing I tell people is all you need is your face, phone, and finger. That's it. I want to make it easy enough so people can knock these relatables out. Yes, can you do a whole 5-hour, 6-hour documentary? Sure, you can do that in Relatable. But most people are doing, the 1 minute to 4 or 5 minute ones. They're doing these shorter videos. They can branch them and link them together. Or if you're writing a book, you can put all kinds of chapters and have a whole chapter experience in Relatable. But that's how we use AI. Now, as far as go-to-market strategy, do you want to hear about that for AI?
I would like that. I think it's good for them to hear some of that.
So and we are doing this in real time. So again, I don't have all the answers, just like all of you guys. We're all figuring this AI thing out together. But I will say, as far as one thing, going back to what I was talking about with these 6 behavior shifts, we have shifted away from the attention economy and lead gen, and we are shifting over to what I call the relationship economy and demand generation. Demand generation means I am invited to the buyer's table when they're ready to buy. Now, in order to do that, you don't just sit around and wait till you get invited. You got to go through awareness, which is express your unique point of view and your change of perspective, because that has to do with category design. People have to go, oh, I never thought about it that way, right? And that's the aha moment they have, kind of like you did, right, with Relatable.
Oh, yeah.
And then you go through consideration. Consideration, and we'll talk about these if you want, but it's like, what are the use cases? What's your customer success stories? What's your competitive playbook? So you're showing like, look, this is how we're different from everybody else. There's all kinds of things in consideration that a customer wants to go through, and each of them are different, right? Hence the choose your own experience. And then when those 2 things are satisfied, then there's readiness to buy. And that could be not necessarily signing up for a subscription or buying a product. It could be, sign up for a free trial, right? Which we have. But I will say this on that, we've shifted from a sales funnel over to a buyer's funnel. If you look at it in the kind of the 30,000 foot level. So in that buyer's funnel, up in awareness, AI is a great place for AI personalization, even maybe up to and including your AI twin, as long as you let them know it's not really you. But in awareness, a massive awareness is really what we all want, because you said it to me. It's like, I'd love to have more people know about Relatable. That's every product's challenge. Our go-to-market is, man, I wish there was more people that knew about Relatable, because once they find out about it, they sign up for it. So we're in the process of doing different things with AI up there. But I will say this, after you go from awareness and now they're in consideration, I always tell people, you better get human to human. Even if you tell them it's your AI twin, they're starting to, you're going to see 2025 is going to be huge for AI as a personalization, AI twins. But guess what they're going to do? They're going to run that push button tech as far down the funnel as they can. And just like with email marketing, it's going to cause a backlash. Because, we talked about this before you started the show. I'm a tech guy. But I will say this, the timeless phrase of people do business with people they like, know, and trust is still true as long as we have humans on this earth. So, and Rain Group did a study last year, 84% of all B2B purchases are based on a relationship, even if the competitor had a better price to sales per terms, 84%. So the relationship piece is huge. People want to build trust and they want to build relationships and they want to have that interaction with the head person. This is why founder brand is so big now. I tell people all the time, because I'm contrarian, I say, Don't do personal brand. To me, personal brand is like Tony Robbins or Oprah Winfrey. If you do personal brand, think about it. If Tony Robbins goes away, what's going to happen to his company? It's going to go away too because he's gone.
Oh, yeah.
But if you do founder brand where you're expressing your unique point of view and you're changing perspectives, this is Steve Jobs. He was founder brand. He went away. Apple's still around. So, founder brand is huge because people are looking for that. Like I said, with that HubSpot study, they want that direct video interaction with that lead person. So we have to be present on these. We have to be omni-channel. We have to be out there where people are. You need to do it on video, and you have to have these dialogues with these people.
I, if you don't mind, elaborate on that a little bit on the truthful nature of how that is as far as return buys and customers. As a director of recruitment and in human resources department, part of the goal was, you have to stack them in. Yeah. But the turnaround was always a problem for some of the organizations. And I prided myself that even through phone calls, my goal was always to build a relationship. And I had been with this organization for about 2 years, and I would have long-term retention growth where they were choosing to stay at their jobs. But if they did not come back, and when they did the survey as far as the highest performing recruiters and so forth, those who had left the job and or were looking to move elsewhere, they would come back to me. That was one of my highest ratings. The main reason that the owner found out was they said, with Seth, we built a relationship, even if it was over the phone. Yeah. And I find in this age, that is what we're trying to do. Not just as business professionals, but we're looking for relationships in how we choose to buy our products. And it's completely one of the most truest things I found. Even if you don't have a regular personal interaction, relationship is the goal that people are looking for to come back to their other persons.
Yeah.
Now that brings.
Yeah, it's so true, Seth. This goes into another aspect of Relatable is not just this human to human, but one of the companies I grew really large, I sold it, was a construction company. So it wasn't even tech because it was, I told you about my childhood. But I wished at that time I had a way to automate like reminders and things. So I built that into Relatable. Like think about like a dentist, a chiropractor, HVAC company, any trades. You come on, the key thing is, right? So you're the founder of a HVAC company and you go, hey, this is Seth Baxter. And I know it's coming up. It's going to be time in the spring to do your AC tune-up. I just want to let you know, so you don't have to think about it again because, we always forget to put our filters in. I just want to make it easy for you. So there could be an upcoming button. Just go ahead and tap on the button, and it automatically adds to the Google or Apple calendar, right? So then you forget about it, or they forget about it, right? And then here, let's say you set it for March 15th. Well, March 15th, up pops a push notification on their phone. They tap on it, and there's a little blurb from you with a link. It says tap here, and boom, you pop up again. You go, hey, I'm back. It's Seth. I'm the other ABC HVAC. It's time for you to go set your marketing your AC tune-up. I know you're really busy. We all have a life. So to make it really simple, there's going to be 3 buttons. You can call us, text us, or set an appointment for whatever's convenient for you, right? So this is the customer loyalty part in that journey, right? But it's not, and the reason why I'm saying this is this actually happened. So one of my lead software developers, we were developing this, and he goes, Peter, I don't get it. He goes, why wouldn't we just send them a text with a reminder? I said, well, here's why. I said, you and I have known each other for 5 years. If all we did was communicate on text, what kind of relationship would we have? He sat back in his chair and he goes, man, I never thought about it that way, right? But see, these are the ahas, that people have in everyday life. And, I just wanted to have something where people, the best is like, look, I'd love to fly out to wherever you are. We sit down and have dinner, get to know each other. Maybe we'll do that in the future. But the thing is, you can't scale that, right? And then if you're having a cup of coffee, you can't scale that. Even Zoom. Like I could have 500,000 people on a webinar, but I can't, that's not scalable. That's why I said it's Relatable is like having a coffee chat with 100,000 or more people at a time. You can scale it, but it almost feels like you're talking one-to-one with them. And that's the connection. That's the relatability. That's what matters to people.
I couldn't agree more. And there's so many areas to delve in this way, how relatable is the fascinating idea for continuing where we're going future in our relationship development. That's where it's going. But I'm also curious, some of our audience might not know that some of your background, 20 years, has been in neurosciences. Talk to us a little bit, and if there's some connectivity to Relatable and your journey along doing some of the research that you have done.
Yeah, well, that whole thing came out of, I was a vice president for product strategy for a consulting firm up in Seattle. Back then, because, all of us guys, we hung out with MIT and Harvard, voice of the customer, blah, 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 all this stuff, right? The academics. Not that
yeah, no, blah, blah, blah.
But it's,
blah, blah, blah.
But well, I'm an engineer. It's all about applied stuff, right? And so I'm fascinated by research, but I'm always thinking like, well, okay, that's great, but how am I going to apply it, right? So I met these two guys. They were in the week-long thing. We worked with a lot of brain science companies, and so there was a couple of neuroscientists there, and they were kind of whispering amongst each other when I was talking about voice of the customer and getting out, to do customer visits and talking to them and, figuring out what the benefits were, right? So I thought, okay, now they've raised my curiosity because they're over there in the corner kind of whispering to each other. So I went over at the coffee break. I introduced myself and I found out these guys are a couple of neuroscientists, and they said, I got to let you know, we've been doing fMRI and EEG studies, and customers do not buy based on benefits and features at all. They buy based on chemical interactions in the brain and emotions. And I went, okay, you guys want to go out to steak and drinks? Because I got some questions to ask you, right? So we spent 3 hours at a nice steakhouse in Seattle. I almost fell out of my chair, Seth, some of the stuff. And they were showing me like some data. They had their briefcases, all that kind of stuff. So I said, hey, can I hang out with you guys for a couple of years? And so I did, and then it continued on beyond that. But what was interesting is if you look at that part of my life, which still continues today, if you look at what happens in the brain, whether it's the croc brain or it is in the reward circuit, and we all know the dopamine effect, the red dot effect, yes, right? That's yes. So there's a reward circuit in the nucleus accumbens, and I get too far in the weeds on this, but there's glutamate. Glutamate is the storytelling elixir. And basically when you tell stories, it releases glutamate in the brain, and that glutamate has neuropathic pathways to the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the memory indexer in the brain. That's where your memory comes from. This is why when people tell stories, you remember the story, and it's passed on from generation to generation, right? But then there's oxytocin. That's the relationship builder one. There's norepinephrine. Norepinephrine, I say that's like the QVC one, right? It's the countdown timer. It's like, you better buy it. Yeah. It's like, you get all frothed up in the brain. But the problem is, with all this stuff, if you don't do it the correct way, what happens? After you're done, the neocortex kicks in and you have buyer's remorse. You go, wait a second. So this ties in with Relatable because it goes back to how do we as humans with human brains develop relationships, and how do we keep those relationships, right? And so this is not look, I'll say to everybody, this is not a manipulation thing. This is an understanding thing. If you understand how relationships are developed and are formed, and the fascination I have always had is like, well, how do you develop trust with somebody, right? Mm. So this is part of the whole trust development. It's a lot of chemical elixirs and hormonal effects in your brain and the oxytocin is one of them. That is a powerful neurotransmitter that develops that trust and that bond, right? And so there's been, you guys can Google, there's tons of studies on oxytocin and all the effects of it, but it led up to Relatable because it was one thing is, first of all, I wanted to have something that people could use, not just in acquiring customers, but used in fostering relationships and developing loyalty and turning them into raving fans. Something I didn't tell you yet is way back when I've written, 9 or 10 books. One of my first books was called Customers for Keeps, which came out of, I had the largest Apple user group in the country. Way back when Guy Kawasaki was there, he came to a couple of our events and all that stuff. That was, that's when Wozniak was still at Apple, and they did the Apple user group. So I wrote this book. Well, I wrote 2 books. One, it was called the 2GS Guide, which was I explained computers and binary and laser printers and floppy disks and all this stuff. Because I was an engineer, so it was like, well, a lot of people were like, well, how do these floppy disks work, right? But then there was the Customers for Keeps, and that really was the forefather of CRMs, because I wrote that book in the 90s, and it was talking about it's not just about getting customers, it's like, how do you keep them and turn them into advisors in your company? I was fascinated with what was happening, kind of having this out of body experience, watching how this was going on in these user groups. And so this all kind of played into the puzzle pieces that got laid down and put together that got me to where I am and launching Relatable.
I said prior to this interview how fascinating I was, and I said I like to think of myself as a constant learner, and I just can't say enough about how I want to seek information and have it how it's delivered and the research of that information. Who was it in your life, a mentor, someone, or even maybe a book that you feel created this thirst for knowledge for you?
Well, I think it was partly learning. I've had I call them defining moments. Like I had a chance to sit down and talk with Stephen Covey of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People for a couple hours.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had a chance. I became friends with Jay Conrad Levinson from that Customer for Keeps book, the guerrilla marketing guy. Now he's passed away. I think a lot of it's been my travels around the world and just being a student of humans, right? It's fascinating to me that we are more common than we are not common.
I agree.
And, you can have all these borders and all these countries and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying, look, this is not kumbaya, blah, blah, blah. It's about being human beings. And what are universal principles, Seth, that really, you can go up to anybody in the world and you can talk to them about empathy and fairness and generosity and authenticity and love. And it's pretty much the same everywhere in the world, right? So we have these common things. If I ask you, like, have you ever had a time where you had someone that treated you where it was unfair?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And instinctively it was unfair.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You don't have to sit there and go, well, I got to write out a sentence or two about that. You just instinctively know that was unfair, right? And we all have that. It's like it's part of our DNA. It's part of our evolution. And so just like, in the croc brain, what do we have? We have fight, flight, or freeze. People know, do I need to fight? Do I need to take off, or am I going to freeze, right? Because back in the cave person days, if you did, you probably got eaten by that cheetah that was on the savannah. This kind of stuff, it's all built into us in our DNA and our evolution. And, fast forward to today, it's a whole different deal. We're not out there with our spears, hunting for food. We're in these digital spaces, right? But it's still the same, and the reactions and the interactions that we have. I don't know if that answers your questions, but that's just my take.
No, it did. I wasn't sure if you had some other place you were going to take that direction as well, because I think the basis of where I'm hoping in creating these new leaders, which is MakerSpar idea, is that some who are watching this and viewing this, not only will they get relatable for the sheer unique nature of what it's going to do, since we've had such a different climactic change with the election and the COVID and a number of different things. I find like this is one of those useful tools, and that's why I can't say enough about it, that supports that connectivity that I feel like we're looking for. And with that in mind, and talking about some of your research, spirit, the connection with spirit, does that fit in here somewhere?
I think it does, because, if you're talking about what does it mean to be a human, right? Now, I will make this distinction, at least this is my opinion. There's spirit and there's religion, two different things in my opinion, right? Absolutely. So if you talk about spirit in the definition of we are all connected, we're all human beings here, there is, because again, you can call it whatever you want. I happen to call it being relatable, right? But I will say that relatable could be as simple as when you're walking into the grocery store smiling at a stranger. That could have made their whole day. You
Absolutely.
don't know what that impact is going to be.
Absolutely.
Relatable could be seeing the homeless guy out at the outside and go get food, but not just giving him food and say, "Hey, brother, you're blessed." Actually stop and talk to them. They're a human being just like you. Yeah. And I have heard some of the most interesting stories from people that I stopped and talked to.
Yes.
And, my dad, when he was alive, he passed away at a younger age, but he always told me, because, I'm half Ukrainian. He was full blood. So he called me Piotr, because Piotr is Peter, Ukrainian Russian. So he goes, "Hey, Piotr." He goes, make sure that you talk to everybody. He said, because first of all, you don't know what they know. And second of all, you don't know who they know. And, if you think about that, there's a lot of power in that statement, because, it's not you don't know who they know for your own personal gain. It's the connection. It's like, look, you're connected to people that I've never even met. Hopefully I will meet some of them in the future. And I'm connected to people you've never even met. Right. So it's this network effect, I think, that has to, brings people together. And then we have tools like Relatable that has a network effect, and it helps to, continue to strengthen those bonds of how do you treat people the right way? How do you, in the relationship economy, how do you have human to human connection? With all this stuff that's flying around us, and it's the speed attack and the push button marketing and the email marketing and the AI and everything, it's enough to make people's head, like Beetlejuice, your head spins off
right.
shoulders, right? Right. That's what I think of when I think of tech. I think of Beetlejuice. I don't know why, but at the end of the day, it's like, and you've heard people, here's the thing, and I'll tell you, if you want, I can talk about some of the stuff I did, leadership versus managing versus coaching. And I wrote a book. Actually, I wrote a book called I Lead, which I can send you a copy of it. It's on leadership. I wrote this book. This good friend of mine, his name is Jim Conley. Jim Conley was one of the first that was approached by the Food Network. Jim Conley knows Wolfgang Puck. He knows Emerald. And the thing is fascinating is Jim Conley turned down the Food Network. That's why you don't know who he is. But what Jim Conley did was he had this thing called CEO Chef. So he taught leadership and teamwork through cooking. And he has worked for years and years with little companies called Google, Facebook, Microsoft, all these big companies, right? But in this book, he taught two totally different roles. He talked about all his leadership experiences when he was running the restaurant up in San Francisco for Wolfgang Puck. That's how they became friends. And all of the stuff that happens in the restaurant world, and the employees and the hiring and the fire. And then I talked about all the stuff over in the tech space, right? The interesting thing though, Seth, is when you start looking at, okay, different worlds, different businesses, totally different industries, but as far as some of the people leadership issues, kind of the same, right? Because it's people, right? Yeah, okay, these guys happen to know tech, and these guys know how to cook and make great food. But it's the human relationship of it all.
It is. I think it's the human relationship is the foundation of it all. And there's a couple of different ways that I find myself so connected to what you said, because they are what I've experienced. And I believe that in anything I've done, the human relationship. And that's why I usually will ask somewhere, where does spirit fit in? And I too agree with you that religion and spirit are two different things. I think when we talk about spirit, sometimes it can fly over one's head, the depth of that. And that spirit doesn't have to be in a religion. It is who we are as human beings. Yeah. And so I'm often amazed by sometimes how the spirit has been the motivator for where we're going in our life and what we've done, and created these incredible nuanced technological advancements and or relatable materials for no pun intended, but pun intended.
Yeah, well, it's true. I have run a lot of miles thinking about three words: innovation, imagination, and inspiration. And innovation, I know where that comes from. That's a collective of all your experiences and belief systems. And, one of the things, there's a whole story. My brother-in-law was Doug Crichton, who was brother to Michael Crichton that did Jurassic Park.
The author.
There's a whole story in that. But he worked with the Yogananda. He was the longest survivor of bone marrow cancer, and he passed away about 10 years ago. But he taught me, there's 7 questions that he shared with me. And one of these questions, which I live by now, and that was about 20 years ago, which is, what if everything you thought to be true were not? Now, what would you do? Because if you do that, it challenges your entire belief system of spirit, of people, of everything. And so, it's a little unsettling because it's like, well, if everything is always up in the air, then where's my foundation, right? But in a sense, you have to kind of get comfortable with constantly challenging your belief systems. Now, there's another question he gave me, which this is part of the leadership thing, right? It's what else is possible. I have used that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's so powerful because if you have
it
teams
really is
fighting with each other, you just go, what else is possible? And settles the emotions down and the reactions and the triggers. And people start looking at a third or a better alternative, right? And so, innovation, I got imagination. I know, well, imagination is part of your experiences and what you can kind of think of that's different, right? But this whole inspiration thing, I don't know. If you figured it out, let me know, because I have gone out and gone for runs and nothing related to any experience I've ever had. All of a sudden, boom, something pops in my head. I go, that's a great idea. I don't know where it came from, right? So does that tie into spirit? I think so. But there's something going on out there that I cannot define as an engineer. I can't logically conclude and go, well, yeah, I know scientifically where inspiration comes from, because I don't. But it's nice to have when you do have it.
I'm curious, when you go out and when you go for those runs and you have that inspirational moment and you say, wow, that is a great idea. What do you do? Speaking to our entrepreneurs, how do you capture that? Is it, okay, so you just memorize that you had this great idea while you were out running? Or is there a methodology you use to keep that great idea and see where you can plant it as a seed? How do you transfer a great idea like that into action and or examine if it is possible?
Well, so first of all, I don't want to lose the idea. So I don't, that's what's nice to have phones around, right? Because you can run around with phones. And I have my phone, I have an Android phone, and I use Keep, and I just open Keep, I turn on the microphone, and right there, I talk about it. And so I capture it there. And then I will go back and I'll look at like, okay, so what are the elements there that are appealing, right? I do go back to the foundational underpinnings of, okay, is there something I need to research or understand here? Because, the thing about it, Seth, is these socioeconomic shifts and even tech shifts, they are so powerful. And I tell everybody, if you're going to go do something and you're going to have a business, focus on the shifts, focus on the megatrends, because, otherwise it's like, look, here's the thing. There's hundreds of thousands of SaaS founders. There's hundreds of thousands of consultants, coaches, fractionals, agencies, you name it. So there's so many of these, and you get hit on LinkedIn all the time with it's like, well, so what's your different? Otherwise in my world, you're like, okay, you're blah, blah, blah. And the problem with that is if you get categorized in that blah, 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 you're commoditized. And what happens with commodities? It's a race to the bottom for price.
That's right.
Right. So that's where I think people have to kind of think a little bit more and go the extra mile and say, what am I going to create that's different? I mean, look at Apple way back, because you're old enough to remember when Steve Jobs got up on that stage when he came back from the company and they were almost in bankruptcy. He said, we are going to think different. And that was the mantra. And remember, if you watch it on YouTube, if you guys haven't watched it, you should watch it. It'll make
it's extreme.
It's inspiring. And everybody's clapping and cheering. But that started the whole mantra to the iPod, the iPad, the iPhone. You remember when Jobs came up in 2007, which isn't that long ago, and said, we have a new category of communication device. It is the iPhone. I mean, he was the forefather of category design. You know, I know the guy that wrote the book, Category Design, Christopher Lochhead, on Play Bigger, but he really embodied that and started that whole movement of how do you look at the world and create different. And so, you know, and that embodied everything, not just in products or service creation, but it embodied too, Seth, what I thought about as far as leadership, management, coaching. Do you have time for a quick story? I'll give you one on leadership.
Absolutely. If anything, Peter, I wanted to be respectful of your time, so we're good.
No, I'm good.
I
actually contacted the other person too. I said I'm going to be a few minutes late, so we're good. So when I was running Verifone, so I got recruited to come into these divisions as the guy to turn them around. Right? They were bleeding millions. Schedules were late. A lot of toxic work culture. You know, fun job. People, you come in and it's like everybody's got their arms crossed. You know, because they always thought, oh, he's the hatch man. He's going to lay off a bunch of people. So I had to deal with that at the very beginning. So when I come in, Verifone when I came out, I think there was 475 employees in that division. And so we had this downstairs cafeteria, Seth. And so here I come in, you know. And I had my suit on and my tie because we wore that back. I don't wear that stuff anymore. But anyway, that's another story. But I came in and I took off my jacket. I took off my tie. I rolled up my sleeves and I said, look, there's two things to know about me. Number one, you don't work for me. You work with me. And number two, my job is to obsolete myself. Now, when you're dealing with a toxic work culture and leadership, you have to find the dancing guy, what I call the dancing guy in the movement. I don't know if you ever saw Dancing Guy on YouTube. The guy's dancing on. You should look it up. It's pretty cool. It's the epitome of movements, right? This guy's out there dancing by himself, and other people are looking at it. Pretty soon, a couple more people, and then within 5 minutes, there's like hundreds, and they're all dancing out there. That's how a movement starts, is with your dancing guys. So right now, we are finding our dancing guys in Relatable. Who are those ambassadors? Who are those people? It's kind of like in the product development curves, they're innovator early adopters. They see the vision, they get it, and they want to go. Kind of like you saw it. It's like, this is incredible, right? So
I want to be the dancing guy for Relatable.
You want to be one of the dancing? You certainly can. We can talk about that afterwards. I'm always about finding dancing guys and working with them directly, me as the founder. So anyway, go back to the story. So this was about 2 weeks into Verifone. And it got, you know, here's the thing. It was so bad there that people would refer to me as, they would come up and go, hi, how are you? Peter _L1. I would go, that was my email handle. It was weird. So if I got everybody together. So first of all, we're abolishing. You guys are all calling each other by your first name. No more of this email handle crap. So then we had this one project and it was behind, and it was the flagship product they were developing. And this one guy, his name was David, and David was a dropout from Berkeley because college was boring. That's how smart this guy was. And we had to write a few 100,000 lines of firmware code, which is, you know, it runs the machine, the hardware and stuff like that. So I called David in my office there about 2 weeks in. I go, hey, David. So I said, we got to do this. I said, you think you're up for the task? He goes, well, yeah, boss, maybe. He goes, but I need a few things. I said, okay, what do you need? He goes, first of all, I got to work from home. And at that time, they didn't do that. I said, done. I said, you can work from home. I'll deal with the backlash here. Because he goes, I got to be working. I'm going to be working, 16 hours a day. He said, then I need 2 new computers, one to code, one to process, so I can go as fast. I said, done. I said, what else do you need? He sits back in his chair. He looks at me. He goes, well, you could bring me donuts and coffee in the morning. Really? He started laughing. He goes, I'm just kidding, man. So here's what happened, though. So he lived up. So this was in Hawaii. I was recruited to live in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii for a few years. So it was in Mililani town, for all the listeners. It's the tech center. And about 30 miles up Cam Highway is Pupukea, where he lived. And so up in North Shore. So that morning at 7 a.m., I was knocking at his door. He opened it up. I had donuts and coffee. So
Wow.
I got him the computers the day before. He was setting everything up, and he had already written some lines of code and things like that. And he was showing me what he's doing. I said, "Look, I'll come back. Every Wednesday and Friday, I'm going to come back and we'll have a little status meeting. You tell me where you're at and things like that. So you have a great day." And after about 45 minutes, I took off. Right. So I'm driving back to the division. It's about 35 minutes away. I come back in, and downstairs was the cafeteria, upstairs was the design center and all that, right? So I come upstairs, and I'm walking down the hall towards my office, and there's all these cubicles, right? Well, his buddy, who was a brilliant, Dugan Yoon, was an electrical engineer, brilliant guy. All of a sudden, I see Dugan pop up. He goes, "Hey, donut boy." And you know what? That stuck, and it spread like a wildfire. And I was donut boy, but that was the cohesive aspect that started the whole work culture change and the leadership. And this is our North Star, and here's where we're going. And then what I did is I had, for every Friday, they stopped that. So I instituted in the budget again. We had a theme, right? So it wasn't just holidays. Every Friday was a theme, a food theme. And each group would rotate and they do the theme. And what I did is I invited the spouses and their kids, because we were working 6 and 7 days a week. I didn't want to have divorces on my hand. So I talked to the spouses as much as I talked to the employees to get them to buy into our vision and what we were trying to do. And it worked. And so they would, whether it was a husband or wife, doesn't matter. They'd kiss their significant other. "I know you got to work. You'll be home, later on. I'll see you then. I love you." And I got the family signed up for this whole thing. So this is, that's a good example of, like, in leadership, you have to think outside the box. You have to create that North Star, but you got to get the right people to buy in. And a lot of times it's not just the people that you're getting the paycheck from you.
That's very true. And I couldn't have better put it. So should I not call you Peter anymore? I should just say, "Hey, donut boy."
Donut boy. Well, now you know. You can call me donut boy.
No, that is a great story.
Yeah.
Peter, see, I was getting ready to slip up and say donut boy, but tell me, you also wrote another book. You mentioned the name. I wanted them to be able to get some insight on your latest work as well. And I thought we should mention that and discuss it just a little bit as far as your time allots.
Yeah. Well, the latest book I'm working on is, it's funny because when I just go back to the neuroscience thing. So I worked with these guys. At that time, I had a construction company, and we weren't building new houses. We were doing high-end kitchen remodels, bathroom remodels, all that kind of stuff, right? And I had a handyman division, but I started learning and started putting this together, right? What else is possible? And I was thinking, okay. So at that time it was 1.4 million in revenue. And I had 3 GMs, I had people in the office. I had a bunch of construction employees and things like that, right? So I went to my GMs. I said, "Hey, I'm going out to sell for this next year." And they go, "What are you doing, boss?" I go, "I got this idea. I got to test it out," right? So, because, it's one thing to learn about science and application and theory, but, you got to get it in the trenches where the rubber hits the road.
Right. That's right.
And so I went out for a year and I sold. And, I'm telling you, Seth, it was the craziest thing ever. As we could talk about, there's limbic implants, there's all this stuff that I developed. But what would happen is, these would be like $150,000, $200,000 kitchens, $50,000 bathrooms. At the end, people go, "I don't know what it is about you, but I just trust you. And I know you're going to do a great job. And I'd love to have you do the work." I never gave them a bid. I know it's going to be fair. And, I want to work with your company. I go, "Okay." So I said, "Give me tomorrow. I'll put together the bid, the proposal. It's going to be around kind of in this range." They go, "Okay, that's fine." And I walk out of there and I'd be like laughing because it was like, this is incredible. Well, anyway, I built that company up to about $6.2 million and I sold it off from using this neuroscience method. And I call it the buying mood blueprint. Well, then I went off and I sold that company. I thought I had some time on my hands. So I thought, well, I'll do a video course. So I created There's this, which I think is pulled off there, it was years ago, but it was 72 videos, and I'm going to revive it. But it talked everything from brain science 101 to how to use this in selling, how to deliver a limbic implant, and how to do glutamate, all this different stuff in there, right? And I sold several thousand of these courses, but I never wrote the book. I don't know why, but I never did. So now I'm writing the book so that everybody can have it. But here's where it gets really cool. So, and these are use cases, right? This is one use case for Relatable. So imagine you have a book, it's up on Amazon or Ingram. You could put a QR code right on the cover and go for an interview with the author or 3 key tips for using what's in this book. Scan here. Boom. I pop up. I'm the author. I start talking to them. It's a Relatable, right? Wow. And inside each chapter, it's like, hey, you want the Cliff Notes version or you want to read the whole chapter? Scan the code. I'm in here talking for 2 or 3 minutes about this is the key things you're going to learn, the meat and potatoes of this chapter. Or tools and resources. See, all this stuff is interactive. You can use QR codes. You can use links. You can share in social. So I keynote speak every once in a while. I put the QR code behind me. If I have 500 to 2,000 people, all the phones come up. Boom. I now can build an audience email list from stage to stage to stage with Relatable. I don't need to sell in the back of the room. I can sell everything inside Relatable experiences as I'm developing relationships, right? If you're a coach, a course creator, a fractional, you can come on and you can do a Relatable to either set a meeting or to have an opt-in and then do a mini course that's specific to their type of business. And then at the end go, hey, if that resonated with you in the mini course, now you collected their email and phone number, and then you say, just go ahead and set a meeting. I'll give you an example. We have people that do AI. So one lady, she's a CEO for an AI company. And now this is AI like LLMs, data scrubbing, big corporation. Okay. But she's on LinkedIn. She goes out, she connects with people in LinkedIn, first DM, so they're cold. She sends them her Relatable, and her Relatable, she talks about who she is. She goes, hey, I'm not a AI, this is really me. But she does, it's like, I know a lot of businesses, they typically have one of 3 things that are happening. Which one are you? This, or this. People choose. Then she goes and talks about it for 3 to 5 minutes. And at the end it goes, if this resonates with you, go ahead and tap on the button to set a meeting with me. Do you know that she's getting a 70% to set meeting conversion on that one Relatable in cold DMs? 70%, 7 out of 10. So she's not pitch slapping people, and she's not doing the, hey, how have you, the question, you're going to get sold when they start asking.
Yes, the introduction.
You know what's going to happen, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like, this is different. It's refreshing, and really it's human to human. And I think that's why, and I've even had people when because I connect with large, following people on Relatable. So I'll do it where I'll comment on their stuff, for a week. And it's not the fist bump one-liner. It's thoughtful, right? Get them to think, change the perspective. They comment back. And then what I'll do, if it's like you, I go, hey, Seth, I've been following your content and commenting. You've been commenting back. I really appreciate it. I love the impact you're trying to make, with Maker's Bar. And, we're trying to make that kind of impact too with Relatable. Here's what Relatable is and does. If that resonates with you and you'd like to, set a meeting with me to talk more about it, just go ahead and tap on this button. I'm getting 8 out of 10 people. And these are big name people on LinkedIn. They connect with me and even some of them go, you know what? That was so refreshing. I've never had somebody send me a video like this. It's so personal, right? Again, 1-to-1, right? And so you can do all that stuff with Relatable. And that's what, the thing is, I tell people all the time, it's like, okay, first of all, this is just a tool. Does the tool work? Yeah, but it's just a tool. It's the framework, how you be relatable. Because I tell people one of our taglines at the end is always be real, be remembered, be relatable. Because that's what you have to do.
I tell you, I'm so glad you explained the last portion of that as far as where the end all is be relatable. That is what drew me in. And I'm not kidding about being the dancer guy. And I am going to predict this. I was so fascinated with how it could be applied and used. I know how big it's going to become, because I just don't see how, especially with the younger generation now and the amount of content creators and the amount of reach that we're trying to have, and more importantly, going back to the earlier portion where we said where people want to be relatable and have that connectivity, the fascination I had with what it was able to do just in the small video presentation blew my mind. So I'm definitely advocating for people to check out your video and and even more so, get in touch with you so they can see how fascinating it is and how usable it is. And I'm not kidding. I definitely want to. I've never been a good rhythmic dancer, but I got my moves when it comes to the
Well, dancing guys come in a lot of different forms. You'll do it. Actually, if you watch the YouTube video of Dancing Guy, that guy had no rhythm either. So, well, he was out there, shaking around to a point where it's like, hey, I'll jump in it. Let's have some fun.
Well, I had, when I used to work with young people, and even my ex-wife, I would go out and dance, and I just have a good time. And they say, I'd be having a good time though. I do my little 1-2 step. So more importantly than anything, after my 1-2 step, and we went up to just my small story, I used to work with 3,000 kids a year for youth in government. And going out to dance to get some of the other kids out there to dance was part of my goal, to get the kids to have good relationships with each other and just take a step out of shyness. When you know it, my little 1-2 step became kind of the thing. So the other kids came and they were like, okay, we could do this. We could do this. And then
it's almost like a flash mob type deal.
Kind of like that. And they were saying, we're going to do the 1-2 step. So I see how the movement can start, and even when it's not the way. And I'm looking forward to receiving the book, our conversations after this interview, B, and if you wouldn't mind, Peter, please share with our audience where they can find you at, how they can get in contact with you. Where would you like to be able to have them work toward getting an understanding Relatable? The last words that they can be able to get in connectivity with you and Relatable.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Seth.
Absolutely.
You guys, here's the thing. We have a free accelerator program. Lady Mary Johnson in my company, she runs it. She's fabulous. It doesn't cost you anything. You can actually, in 2 sessions, you can build your first Relatable, although you can do it on your own too. It's pretty easy to use it, but it helps to cut through the noise. Like, what do I want to build first, right? She helps you with that. You build your first Relatable and you're on your way. And it's all during the free trial. So you don't have to pay for the subscription and our free trial. So you can go to LinkedIn. I'm there on LinkedIn. Just look up Peter Lisoskie, and you'll see me there. You can connect with me there. If you want to do the Relatable Accelerator, you can. If you want to find out more about Relatable too, you can go to our website. It's beRelatable.pro. So beRelatable.pro. There's some videos up there too as well where you can, I don't know if that's where you went or if you saw them on LinkedIn. I'm not sure which one you saw.
LinkedIn. My, our AK, she's also a tech. She has suggested I can reach out to this fellow. Once I was captivated immediately when I saw your profile, and it just made sense to me. And then some of the spirit that radiated from it. I mentioned this prior to our interview. In the top of your bio, there was something that stuck out to me as well. And you said, sometime thought leader.
Yeah. I had that in there. Yeah.
And I just really understood that. And then when I got into the relatability of it, no pun intended, but it just helped and assisted me in saying, there's so much more to this. And it's what drew me in. And I can't say how much a valuable use of time that we had here, in gratitude for you sharing this with us and our audiences. I am looking forward to part 2, looking forward to the book, looking forward to being a relatable dancing guy, and looking forward to growing in our relationship where I can comfortably say, hey, donut boy.
There you go. Well, I think you're already there. I would know if you said that. I'd be like, yeah, he knows the story.
Peter, I thank you so much. I really do, on behalf of Maker's Bar, because you are completely the epitome of what we're looking for as far as entrepreneurs and creating the next generation of leaders. So we truly thank you for spending use of your time with us today.
Well, thank you, Seth, for having me on. It's fun. It's fun to just talk and tell. It's in Hawaii they call it talk story, and I learned that from the tribal elders there. And just good to talk story. People, if they resonate with a few points in it, then we did our job, right?
We got to talk about some of your travels. I imagine you have some incredibly fascinating travels since you've been to all these places. I think if you're up for a part two, let's just spend an episode and maybe just pick a country and just talk about your favorite story from that country.
Well, there's so many. I could tell you about the lady in the black coat with that read my bones in Taiwan. I mean, there's so many stories I have that just of different strange things that happened in travels, and stuff that it's like. Not to keep going, but it's like I look at life like a puzzle, and I've told this to my boys, it's like just keep laying down the pieces. You don't know what the picture is, but you keep laying the pieces. Pretty soon a pond appears. Keep laying the pieces, then a tree, then a boat, and then you go, oh, I know why that happened back there. It was all coming up to here, right? I'm not a total fatalist, but I do think there's a journey that we all have. And that, yes, we do this on our centered path, but eventually we get back, right? Or we go insane if we go too far off. But but I do think we all are on a journey. We all have to try to figure this out in this school called Earth, and it's a fascinating adventure, I think.
And you're a fascinating brother, and I'm looking forward to calling you brother in my future.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't say enough. Ladies and gentlemen, I said get your brain emptied in order to get some information poured into it. And your brain hasn't been squeezed dried yet because there's plenty more for us to engage in with Peter here, aka Donut Boy. But I can't say enough about how we at MakersBar thank innovators like himself for sharing with us and taking their time with us. If you've enjoyed this interview and what you're seeing with MakersBar, please press like and subscribe and share the content. When I say to Peter, I was very interested in being the dancer guy, I meant that because this is one of the most innovative technologies I've seen myself in years, and I'm up in age there. I would like this to be shared and talked about. So if you like the content you saw today, do us a favor, subscribe and share this content. We would love to get more information out there for Peter and his company, beRelatable. Now, I'm often closing with the statement that says, the love-evolution is the revolution we all want. I think today what I'll close in this statement with is always be open to learning. You never know what you discover. And then leaving some of the words that Peter had said. I am so enjoying this thing of this planet Earth school of life. How did you say that, Peter? Take us out with those words, please.
It's just all about enjoying this school called Earth.
That's it.
At the end of the day, be real, be remembered, and be relatable.
You know what? That was even better. On that note, thank you for joining us on MakersBar. We are creating 1 million leaders today for tomorrow, and this was another one of those episodes that has done so. Peter, again, with all our love and gratitude, we look forward to all the great things we're going to be seeing with you in the future and a part 2.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Until next time, guys.
Hey.